If you're thinking about resilience as something that's just inside of us, I'm going to suggest that that's only sort of half the story. Because a lot of what comes out, that positive attitude, that sense of optimism, is largely also spurred by the people around us. I remember that I met this young woman in my clinical practice a few years ago. She would come to see me on her lunch hour, and she was a paralegal, so she would basically walk from her office down to where I was working, and she always showed up, because it was a work day, she would always show up just dressed so incredibly well. And I say that because what was significant was the story she told me was kind of, well, very different. What she told me was that she was in a relationship that was quite emotionally abusive, and she hadn't been able to figure out a way to get rid of this guy. Now, it was interesting for me. I was trying to understand, how do I motivate her? How do I create this resilience inside of her to sort of take action? And after getting to know her a little bit, and the incongruity of how she looked coming from her work site and what she told me about her life at home, I just suggested to her a small little experiment. All I asked her to do is, I just wanted to see what would happen if she went home and didn't change out of that sort of professional veneer and tried to cope with this guy. What would happen? And she found, when we met a week later, she said it was like a light bulb moment for her. She was triggering herself with her clothing that she was somebody worthy of a lot of respect. But she couldn't be that person and then let herself be, in a sense, emotionally manipulated and abused by this guy. So when you look at that pattern, it wasn't very long after that we were able to set up a safety plan. We got her friends involved in helping her to escape the apartment. We waited till her lease was sort of up, which happened to coincidentally be within sort of 6 weeks later. So she was able to sort of evacuate this life with a safety plan. She had contacted the police if there was any danger of violence. She had me as her support network as well. There was a whole bunch of things that we put in place. Now, my argument is that yes, on some level, she had to change her attitude. She had to change her desire to be someone different. She had to flip the switch, right? But a lot of that was as a result of it being facilitated by cues outside of her. Whether it was her colleagues at work who, when they looked at her, they said, "You are a professional up-and-comer. You are a woman with great potential." Whether it was simply me being in her corner or the fact that she had friends that were willing to sort of sneak into the house or at least protect her so that she could get her stuff out of there. So resilience, from my understanding, is becoming this kind of complicated dance between what we have inside of us and what we do to awaken that in people. When people present with sort of a complex trauma or complex needs, we're very quick to sort of fly in professional help and make things very complicated for people's healing. Most people, all they need is a job, a ride, a home, and a friend. If you have a job, a ride, a home, and a friend, your mental health, your state of well-being is likely to be actually quite good. So let me offer a definition of resilience that's very practical. Rather than just thinking about resilience as our capacity to bounce back, I'm going to suggest that capacity, that shift in attitude, that positive orientation towards life is actually something that is facilitated. So for me, resilience occurs in a context of adversity. When there's stress on our lives, I'm going to suggest that resilience is our capacity, individually or in groups, to navigate our way to the psychological, the social, the cultural, and the physical resources that we need for well-being. Now, it's also, however, our capacity, individually and again in groups, to negotiate for those resources to be offered to us in contextually and culturally meaningful ways. Now, that's a lot of words for a definition. But if I could just boil this down to a couple of key concepts. One is this idea of navigation. So navigation is partly your own personal agency to get up in the morning and go searching for what you need to do well, pushing yourself to go to the gym, pushing yourself to have positive relationships, pushing yourself to look for new opportunities. But there's no point navigating if there ain't nothing there. What's the point of navigating if there's no islands to bump up against? So navigation is this dual kind of energy, right? It's me pushing out into the world, but the world reciprocating with opportunities. Now, if it was that easy, then all you'd have to do is put in front of people opportunities to do well. So let's think about this. Have you ever offered somebody, maybe one of the workers that you're working with, one of your clients, and offered them something and they just don't accept it? people don't always take advantage of opportunities. And that's because of this principle of negotiation. What we're given has to, in a sense, match what we need. People will come and say, I need something. The young woman who I began with, she basically came in saying, look, I love this guy. I want to stay. I want the stability. I don't want to be single. I know it's an awful kind of relationship, but it's better than being back on the dating scene. I mean, it was like she was saying to me, just follow me, Mike. This is good, isn't it? And I was kind of going, well, I don't really want to judge, but it doesn't sound like it's meeting all of your needs. And it doesn't sound like it's matching who you are and your identity. There's all kinds of other aspects of your life this is not meeting. And so I didn't oppose her. I just said, let's just play with it. Let's just see what happened. And I just introduced her to some new ideas. I said, would you follow me and not change your clothes when you go home? I was negotiating with her about a different set of conclusions about her life. But I was trying to match it to her. And it only worked because eventually I figured out a way to match the intervention to what she needed. And I'm going to suggest this, that if things are going really rough in your lives, in your particular context, never forget that this causes us stress, and what we're actually needing for our resilience is always this dynamic of asking from our environment, please negotiate with me a little bit so that I can get what I need in ways that make sense to me.